On Sunday, the news broke, Sunday, August 9th, the news broke that Ben Jones, the Dukes of Hazzard actor and a two-term congressman from Georgia, passed away at the age of 84. And I wanted to extend my deepest sorrows to his family, including his wife, Alma, as Ben Jones, for many of us, was a hero. Ben Jones played the role of Cooter, and there he is in that role from 1979. That series aired on CBS for about 6 seasons, and Cooter was a big part of that. And if you're a guy like me that grew up in that time period, there was nothing like CBS on Friday night with Dukes of Hazzard, followed by Dallas. And this series, which began shooting in the late 70s in Covington, Georgia, season 1 was filmed there before they moved it out to Hollywood. Just such a fixture of growing up in the South and growing up in America when we had TV shows that were Southern based, and yeah, it made fun of us a little bit, but all in all, it was an all-American type show, and Ben Jones, an all-American type guy. Jon Rawl here with you. This is Y'all Talk with an Accent on all things Southern. And I will say, from a personal standpoint, I got to know Ben Jones a little bit. Actually, in 2005, when I was the guy behind Y'all Magazine, which is why we have the name of this show, Y'all Magazine, we put out 30 of these issues back in the 2003 to 2010 timeline. Perhaps you were a subscriber of our great magazine. Would love to bring it back. But one of our issues was all Dukes of Hazzard centric because we had the movie come out called The Dukes of Hazzard that Jessica Simpson starred in. And yeah, there in the top part, we talked about the original Dukes of Hazzard. And Ben Jones came to Mississippi to see me from his home in Virginia and spent a weekend with me, he and Alma. And it was one of the greatest and coolest things that I've had a chance to do in my professional life, was to hang out with a true star, a childhood hero from a TV series that I just wouldn't miss on Fridays. And I bet you a lot of you felt the same way. But we did this great little write-up in the magazine, and I could have easily put this out on the screen digitally, but I thought it'd be kind of cool to hold up an actual printed magazine. There's Daisy, Catherine Bach still hanging in there. I had a chance to go to a couple of Dukes Fest at Bristol Speedway that Ben would be a big part of, because Ben opened up Cooters, which has been a chain of gift shops in places like Nashville. I think he's got one in the Gatlinburg area, and then he's got one in Virginia. And he invited me to come up to Dukes Fest in Bristol, and it was there that I got a chance to hang out with Catherine, which was kind of neat. And James Best, I think, was still alive at that time when I made it. But what a great series. And then we did. Ben actually wrote in this old issue of the magazine. He wrote his own personal account, his reflection of being on the Dukes of Hazzard. Just a great thing. And then when he was hanging out with me that weekend, we actually had a parade, and there's a picture of Ben riding through the Oxford Square in the General Lee. How cool is that? Just a great thing. I didn't realize we had this in the magazine this was out in, let's see here, August 2005 was this issue of Y'all Magazine. Trivia question: how many episodes were the General Lee in? The car, the famous General Lee car. And all but one episode of the Dukes of Hazzard. Another trivia question: what was the name of Roscoe P. Coltrane's dog? Which that one should be funny, pretty easy to remember. The name of his dog was Flash. And I think there was another hound dog or something in the show too. Just a classic show. Again, Y'all Magazine. Check it out. I think you can see these online somewhere. We need to get it on y'all.com. That's a pledge I make to you. But again, here on the show of the South, we want to pay tribute to my friend Ben Jones, who passed away Sunday at 84. By the way, his wife put out on social media just after he passed away that he died in his Virginia home on Sunday, sitting in the chair getting ready to watch his beloved Atlanta Braves baseball as they were in New York taking on the Yankees. And Ben was in his chair ready to watch the Bravos, and he died of a massive heart attack. Now, that, my friends, is a pretty darn good way to go if you got to go. But just, I'm sure many of you grew up watching the Dukes, and just a cool guy. Now, Ben was born in North Carolina, but as a very young infant, his family moved to Portsmouth, Virginia, and that's kind of where he grew up, was Virginia. But he ended up going to school at both East Carolina and UNC. And I think it was at UNC he told me that he got into the acting. And that's where the bug really took off for him to go forward with the acting career. And he was living, I think, in the Atlanta area when they cast the Dukes of Hazzard. As I said, Covington was where this show originally was filmed. I don't think CBS intended for the Dukes of Hazzard in the late 70s to be a hit show, but somehow it became a hit show, and we're all happy for it because it changed a lot of our lives for sure. But I've got some pictures here courtesy of IMDb. This is a good picture from back in the day. There's John Schneider and Tom Wopat and Cooter down there at the bottom. And the General Lee, which honestly, the car, which if you don't know this, was not just an orange Dodge. It was a Hemi orange is the name of that color. And it was just as much as a star of the show as John or Tom, Bo and Luke, and even Cooter. I hate to tell you that, Cooter. But I've talked to John Schneider about the General Lee, and I've talked to him about why the Dukes of Hazzard isn't out there as much as it could be in syndication. And the answer was pretty obvious. The reason the Dukes of Hazzard is not easily found out there on streaming channels, it's because of the Confederate flag that's adorned across the top of the General Lee and the name General Lee. And there's some Confederate iconography, I guess is the word, found throughout the show. I think the sheriff's cars had the Georgia flag on them, I think, the old Georgia flag. And, for some people, that just doesn't sit too well here in 2026. But that's a nice picture from back in the day when that series was being filmed. But, of course, Ben was not just in the Dukes of Hazzard. He had a long history of films, as IMDb shows here, that he was active in a movie all the way up till 2021. Unbreakable was the name of that film. In a lot of the Dukes of Hazzard tributes and reunion shows. I didn't realize he was on an episode of Dallas, as it shows here. Got his start actually in the 1960s. This first thing he's credited for is Together for Days. That was actually in 72 when he was in that. But I think from what I remember, he told me he was in the Atlanta area doing some acting and things like that. Moonrunners, he played Chicago federal agent Fred in a kind of cult classic there in the mid-70s called Moonrunners. But had a chance to play Cooter and did a good job again. People like Kentucky native James Best were a part of the Dukes. And Georgia boy, sorta, John Schneider. John was born in New York State, but I think he came to the Atlanta area in his high school years, and he actually attended the University of Georgia. And you talk about a guy that's got all the talent in the world. Not only does he have the looks, but he's a great actor. The first concert that I ever went to and paid money to attend was a John Schneider concert at my local state fair. My high school and still best friend in life, I convinced him to go with me when I was probably 13 or 14 to see. He was a hero to my friend because of the TV show, but gosh, I loved John Schneider's country music hits. I mean, he truly has put out about a dozen amazing country music songs. Just so talented. And he's still singing and he's still touring, and that's why he and Ben Jones were still buddies. And Tom Wopat, they still got together. They put on these Duke shows. They had the Dukes Fest, and it was just a great thing. And I hope Alma, his widow, she's kind of been a big part of Ben's business career for the last 25, 30 years. She finds a way to keep these stores and also these events going on. I get emotional talking about Ben Jones. But also, I want to point out Ben Jones wasn't just an actor. He was a congressman. He ran for Congress in the late 80s I think, in the Covington area there in Atlanta. I think that was part of his district. I think his district ultimately was taken over by Newt Gingrich. I think he told me that. But he was a 2-term congressman, a Democrat. And to my knowledge, he remained a Democrat. But he was a conservative. And I'll never forget, in 2015, Ben Jones started appearing on a bunch of television shows, news shows, defending the Confederate flag, defending the Confederacy. He was an active member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, of which I'm also a member of that organization. And he was on TV doing interviews defending Confederate monuments and different Confederate things. He was sort of a spokesperson for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. And I'll never forget that. I mean, he did a great job going against people who were hell-bent on tearing things down. And again, Ben was, to my knowledge, still at that point a Democrat. But just a great Southerner, North Carolina born, Virginia raised, and had been living in Virginia for many years upon his passing on Sunday at the age of 84. Ben Jones Cooter, we're going to miss you, buddy. And thank you for the great library of work that you've left behind for generations of people to enjoy. And I know this wasn't your catchphrase, but as your buddy James Best, old Roscoe, would say, "Coo, coo, 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 coo." We love them Dukes. And Cooter was right there with them. God bless you, Cooter.